What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another Dragonflight video. It's actually a War Within video, of course. We're going to talk about the Frostfire Mage, another hero talent tree that's coming in the War Within. We talked about the Dark Ranger. We're going to move on to the Mage. So this is a combination of fire and frost, of course, as the name suggests. Really quickly on the outside of this tree, basically, these first two nodes are pretty important, and then these last four nodes are really important. Actually, these last two in particular. These ones on the side are kind of whatever. This one in the middle is kind of whatever. So these five are kind of inconsequential. These bottom four are really important, and then the top two, of course, are really important. We're going to dig into this tree. This tree essentially might be one of the best trees that they've made so far. I think Max did a video about this, and he was talking about how he thinks it's one of the best trees they've made, for sure. So I think other people have a similar thought to it. Just the design behind this is really, really clean. So what's going on here? The very first note is, of course, Frostfire Mastery. This is like a brand new stat boost that you're giving yourself. If you cast a Frost spell, you get 1% Mastery. If you cast a Fire spell, you get 1% Haste, stacking up to 8 times. This is exactly like the Mongoose Bite window for Survival Hunter. As soon as you open the window, you have 12 seconds to get to the maximum number of stacks. Okay? If you don't get to the maximum number of stacks in 12 seconds, or whatever stack you get to in 12 seconds, it stops and it resets, and then you start it again. Okay? So, like, casting a fire spell doesn't continuously keep the buff rolling, etc., etc. Okay? That's important later on. Then here's Frostfire Bolt. We get this back, which is super cool. Launches a bolt of Frostfire, deals damage, slows an enemy, causes damage over time. Frostfire Bolt grants a stack of both Fire Mastery and Frost Mastery. Okay, so this is important. It's going to be important later. But this is really interesting. Look at the top of the tooltip. This replaces Frostbolt and Fireball. It replaces them. This has enormous implications that I wasn't thinking about before when I first looked at this tree. And I had a couple of tabs open, but they're in a different browser. We're going to go here really quick and make sure we do this. Let's go to Fire. We'll do this. And then we'll get a Frost tree going. So here's what's happening here. Oh my god, stop it. Let's say you're a Frost Mage and you cast Frostfire Bolt. What does that do for you? Well, it's the exact same as casting Frostbolt itself, because it replaces Frostbolt. So my understanding of this, we don't know this for sure, but I believe the implication here is that every talent that interacts with Frostbolt will now interact with Frostfire Bolt, which means you can have it proc your Fingers of Frost, right? Gives you, cause your next Ice Lance, the damage is if the target was frozen. There are some really important talents here that are really, really insane. Let's look down more at the bottom. Slick Ice is insane. While Icy Veins is active, each Frost Bolt that you cast reduces the cast time of Frost Bolt and increases its damage done, stacking up to 20%. That now becomes Frostfire Bolt. So Frostfire Bolt will now have a 20% faster cast time. You go Frost, you can just keep slinging these things, and it's going to keep giving you this mastery buff over time. And as we're going to see later, if you get to the maximum number of mastery stacks very, very quickly, then you're going to get additional bonuses as well. So, like, that's insane. There's also Fractured Frost, which causes your Frostfire, or now your Frostfire Bolt, because it replaces Frostbolt. It might hit up to 2 additional targets. That's insane, right? There's some really, really interesting synergies there. Let's go on the fire side. Instead of casting Fireball, you're now casting Frostfire Bolt, but look at the interactions here. This is really crazy. We have Firestarter at the top. First of all, each time your Fireball fails to critically... Oh, that's Pyrotechnic, sorry. Each time you fail to crit, you get a crit bonus. So if you cast Frostfire Bolt and it doesn't crit, it'll give you a Pyro proc, I think. Firestarter, you now always crit if the enemy is above 90% health. That is insane because of this talent down here. We'll get to this in a second. But there's some crazy synergies there. And then towards the bottom of the tree, you know, you've got this interesting Flame Accelerant talent, which might be a whole new build for Mage. It might be an entirely different build right here. If you haven't cast Fireball or Frostfire Bolt for 8 seconds, your next Frostfire Bolt will deal 70% increased damage and have 20% reduced cast time. That is insane. You can have a Giga Chad Frostfire Bolt. So you cast a bunch of fire spells, you do your regular fire rotation, and then every 8 seconds you weave in a huge Frostfire Bolt. Obviously, you can't cast Fireball itself, so I don't know if this would actually work. I'm just saying there's something interesting here that might be really crazy. So at the very outset, I just want to make sure you're aware of that this replaces Frostbolt. It replaces Fireball. There are massive implications there, I think, on the talent tree. That's just very first and foremost, okay? Let's get these 5 talents out of the way here. Fire and Frost imbued warding. When you cast Ice Barrier, you get Fire Barrier and vice versa. Meltdown, you melt slightly out of your ice block, allowing you to move slowly during the ice block and increasing movement speed. This might be really good. Ice block and ice cold trigger a blast wave when they end. This is the most important thing here, is that you get an extra blast wave proc, which again does fire damage, and that's automatically going to give you a proc on your mastery. This is a little bit more of like a CC thing. It might be more of a PvP thing as well. Nothing too crazy here. Isothermic Core. Comet Storm calls down a Meteor. Meteor calls down a Comet Storm, which is very cool. That's a lot of extra damage, first of all. And, of course, it's going to give you a trigger of your mastery on the other side, right? So you cast your Meteor, your Fire Meteor. You get your 1% haste. Then you're going to immediately get a Comet Storm. It's going to give you 1% mastery. So very, very cool. Let's go over here. Elemental Affinity. Fire, the cooldown of Frost spells is reduced by 10%. Frost, cooldown of Fire spells is reduced by 30%. This is just, like, really weird. I tried to figure out, like, what they're talking about here, why this even matters. Because if you're a Frost Mage, cooling down your Fire spells only means, like, Blast Wave, Dragon's Breath, and Fire Blast. Those are, like, the 3 that you have access to. So it's more of a CC thing. It's more of just a CC on, like, enemies or, like, a PvP thing. I think that's all this really matters for. For Fire, cooling down your Frost spells means you get cooldown on Ice Block, which is a little bit more significant, actually. That's why the Fire one is only 10% and the Frost one is 30%, because Fire is going to get extra Frost Nova cooldown, Ice Block cooldown, all that kind of stuff. So that's pretty good. Flame and Frost, Cauterize resets the cooldown of your Frost spells with a base cooldown shorter than 4 minutes. This is incredibly strong for Ice Block, for Fire Mage. So again, just more conditional CC. This has a cooldown of 4 minutes. So this thing says reduces the cooldown of your Frost spells with a base cooldown shorter than 4 minutes. So it actually might not count for Ice Block. I thought I just completely misspoke there. I thought there was a way to get Ice Block's cooldown lower than 4 minutes, but maybe there isn't. And anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, this is mostly a CC thing. It's mostly about just defense. It has really nothing to do with your offense, which is fine, okay? Frostfire Infusion. Your Frost and Fire spells have a chance to trigger an additional bolt of Frostfire, dealing Frostfire damage. This effect generates Frostfire Mastery. So I believe that this also includes Frostfire Bolt itself. So I think you can cast Frostfire Bolt, and it has a chance to trigger a Frostfire Bolt, which will trigger your Mastery, of course, okay? There you go. Severe Temperatures. Casting Frost or Fire spells increases the damage of your next Frostfire Bolt by 6%. So this is anything other than Frostfire Bolt will buff Frostfire Bolt. You can't buff Frostfire Bolt with Frostfire Bolt. So you have to cast, and I believe you have to cast like a, Fire Blast or Flame Strike or Pyroblast or Ice Lance or Flurry. So the other one, Thermal Conditioning. Frostfire Bolt's cast time reduced by 10%. That's pretty good. Instead of a 2-second cast, it's a 1.8 second cast, I believe. Because you're taking 0.2 seconds off of that. So 1.8 seconds from 2. I don't know if this can be reduced by haste even further than that. Maybe it could be. We'll have to see. Okay? That's the top section. We're going to get to the bottom section now. This is pretty important. This is probably the most consequential node in the entire tree, Frostfire Empowerment. So let's read what it does. Your Frost and Fire spells have a chance to activate Frostfire Empowerment, causing your next Frostfire Bolt to always crit, explode for 80% of its damage to nearby enemies. That's uncapped, by the way. And be instant cast. One thing I forgot to mention at the very beginning of this, which is important now, so it's relevant now. When you cast Frostfire Bolt, it counts as a Fireball or a Frost Bolt. Again, those have a chance to trigger all those different talents I talked about. They also have a chance to trigger things like Hot Streak for Fire Mage. Okay? You can get a Hot Streak proc off of this because it counts as a Fireball. So if it crits, you get Hot Streak. For Frost Mage, it obviously counts towards your Icy Veins, and it can give you back your Flurry. There's a lot of synergies there. There isn't just a direct, like, passive that you're getting a bonus on there. But oh, sorry, it's also giving you your icicles as well. That is the other big thing. So casting Frostbolt or Flurry grants you an icicle. This is also going to grant you an icicle. So there's incredible synergy here. So this is really important, though. Frost and Fire spells have a chance to activate Frostfire Empowerment, causing your next Frostfire Bolt to always crit. So for Fire Mage, you're getting an immediate Hot Streak proc guaranteed, okay? If you get this proc. That's very important, okay? Here's the final node. This brings it all together. You ready? Flash Freeze Burn. Frostfire Empowerment, which is this thing here, grants you the maximum benefit of Frostfire Mastery and refreshes its duration. Activating Combustion or Icy Veins grants you Frostfire Empowerment. This is insane. Okay, this gets really complicated. We're into like 7 layers deep on the onion here. So this Frostfire Empowerment, when it happens, whenever it happens, you get the maximum number of stacks on your Frostfire Mastery. You go right to the top. You get 8% haste, 8% mastery for 12 seconds. Okay? You can automatically get a proc on Frostfire Empowerment if you activate your major cooldown. So you're hoping to get procs on this thing. If you do, you send your Frostfire Bolt. It does a bunch of AoE damage, and it always crits, and then it gives you 8% haste, 8% mastery. If you activate Combustion, you get the same thing. If you activate Icy Veins, you get the same thing. This is really, really crazy, right? So think about a Fire Mage activating Combustion, and then you have a guaranteed crit. I mean, you always have a guaranteed crit anyway, so the guaranteed crit part for the Combustion side of it doesn't really matter. But let's imagine that before your Combustion, you have a proc. You get a proc on Frostfire Empowerment, which would be really cool. You can activate your Combustion, immediately send out your Frostfire Bolt, get your big stat boost. It automatically crits. You get a Pyro again. Then you could just go back and forth from Fire Blast Pyro, Fire Blast Pyro. You could do your regular Combustion rotation. But you could also be weaving in Frostfire Bolts because they're guaranteed to crit as well, which is insane, right? Really, really cool. Good combination there. But mostly it's that outside of Combustion, you're going to be getting these procs, and they're going to be critting. For Fire Mage, that is huge. A guaranteed crit is exactly what Fire Mage wants. So outside of Combustion, I think this is quite powerful. Icy Veins is a bit of a different story. If we look at Icy Veins up here, accelerates your spellcasting, granting you 20% haste. Activating Icy Veins summons a water elemental, yada, yada, yada. Water elemental's abilities increase your frost damage dealt by 3%. So, but you can also increase the duration, and then your Ice Lance against frozen targets extends Icy Veins as well. And then obviously you've got Slick Ice as well, which is, I think, the craziest part of it. This is why this talent was so important, why I brought it up earlier. When Icy Veins is active, Frostbolt or Frostfire Bolt, cast time is reduced by 4%. So this is really crazy. You activate Icy Veins, and then you just cast Frostfire Bolt over and over and over and over again. And the cast speed on it is going to go up, and it's just going to maintain that mastery. You're going to have a crazy amount of haste. You're going to have a crazy amount of cast time reduction. You're just going to be able to cast so many Frostfire Bolts if you want to. You can just keep doing it over and over again, and it's going to just keep these buffs going, which is very, very cool. And I think that your speed is just going to be incredible. And obviously, if you're getting procs on Frostfire Empowerment, then you're going to obviously get a guaranteed crit, and it's going to splash. So then this single target damage that you're doing turns into AoE damage as well. Okay? It's also interacting with icicles, so you're going to be getting all kinds of icicles. You can Ice Lance and send those things out as well. It's just going to be crazy, right? So very, very, very cool combos there. It all kind of really meshes together really well. Here's the final two talents that I want to look at. There's an ice one and a fire one. Okay, let's look at the fire one. Reaching your maximum number of stacks, which again, we just said happens when you get this proc on Frostfire Empowerment, right? Or if you activate your major cooldown. Reaching your maximum number of stacks of Fire Mastery causes your next Fire Blast to apply Living Bomb. When this Living Bomb explodes, it reduces the cooldown of Phoenix Flames by 10 seconds. That's pretty insane, right? Because Phoenix Flames, already you can get a couple of different charges of Phoenix Flames from Alex Strauss's Fury. But it has a 25-second recharge. That's pretty quick, so you're carving half the recharge time off of a Phoenix Flames whenever you reach the maximum number of stacks of your Fire Mastery. Now, here's what I don't know about this. The wording is very precise. Reaching the maximum number of stacks. So here would be my question. What if you get a proc of Frostfire Empowerment and you fire off your Frostfire Bolt it's going to give you the maximum number of stacks. So you get a proc of Frostfire Empowerment, you send out your Frostfire Bolt, it gives you this bonus, then you press your Fire Blast, it puts a living bomb on the enemy. Now, you've consumed this buff, okay? What if you then activate Combustion and you go back up to the maximum number of stacks? Do you get this excess fire proc again? And then what if you get another proc on Frostfire Empowerment and it puts you back up to your maximum number of stacks of the mastery? Do you get this proc again? This is what I don't know. I feel like that's probably overpowered given how often it feels like you can proc the Frostfire Empowerment. But if that is the case, that would be completely insane and something that you could just keep getting. Fire Blast, Living Bomb, Fire Blast, Living Bomb. You just keep getting it, right? And you reduce the cooldown of Phoenix Flame, so that'd be kind of crazy. Let's look at the Frost side of this. Reaching the maximum number of stacks of the Fire Mastery, which again, it just happens for free when you get this empowerment, causes your next Ice Lance to apply a Living Bomb. When the Living Bomb explodes, gain Brain Freeze, which is super cool. Brain Freeze, of course, is like one of your main ways of getting back your Flurry. That's how you get Flurry back, right? So Frost Bolt has a chance to give you your Flurry back, which again is now Frostfire Bolt. And of course, if you get this empowerment, you're going to get a free Flurry proc just for free, which is actually insane. So the single target implication here for Frost is really wild, right? Like, if you're casting Frostfire Bolt anyway, you're going to be getting Brain Freeze procs all the time anyway, and then you're going to get another guaranteed proc on top of that with this excess fire node for Frost Mage. I know it's very confusing, but just when you're looking at this talent, if you're fire, you get the fire one. If you're frost, you get the frost one. You don't get both if you're whatever, right? Doesn't work that way. Let's look at the other side. Excess frost. So if you're a fire mage, reaching the maximum number of stacks of Frost Mastery, which again is just getting it through Frostfire Empowerment, causes your next Phoenix Flames to also cast Ice Nova at 200% effectiveness. Ice Nova actually does a crazy amount of damage, so that's just a good AoE damage spell. It doesn't... The implications of this don't matter as much for fire because this also freezes enemies in place, right? Which is important for Frost because when you freeze enemies in place, your Ice Lances do like quadruple damage, right? Or whatever the number is. So you get a Ice Nova at 2% effectiveness. When you consume excess Frost, so when you use the Phoenix Flames, the cooldown of Meteor goes down by 5 seconds. So this is pretty cool. Bit of a Meteor combo there. You could obviously combo this with Isothermic Core and do a bit of a Meteor build potentially, okay? Let's look at the Frost side of this. Reaching maximum number of stacks of Frost Mastery causes your next Flurry to also cast Ice Nova at 200% effectiveness. When you consume excess Frost, the cooldown of Comet Storm goes down. Again, Meteor stuff. This is way better, I think, for Frost Mage, where Ice Nova, getting a free Ice Nova is nuts. It does a lot of damage, and it freezes enemies, so you can immediately get extra damage for your enemies that are frozen, right? Which is a big part of what Frost Mage does. So I think this has much bigger implications for Frost Mage. The Living Bomb thing is good. There's nothing wrong with it, but Living Bomb has a little bit less synergy for fire than the Ice Nova does for Frost. So I think for Frost, this is really good. Of course, your next Flurry, you're going to be getting lots of Flurries with this build for Frost Mage because Frostfire Bolt's going to be triggering Brain Freeze all the time. You get a guaranteed Brain Freeze over here. So remember, you get both Excess Fire and Excess Frost. You're going to get both of them for whichever spec you're playing. So this tree is like... It's honestly like 5 or 6 layers of like an onion. You just keep peeling back one talent after another, and you're like, oh my god, there's like so many implications over here, so many implications over here. Let's just take it from the top really quickly. You get this new Stat Stick Mastery, okay, and you're getting a new spell. This spell, Frostfire Bolt, replaces Frostbolt, and it replaces Fireball. That has implications on the talent tree for Fireball and for Frostbolt, depending. You probably are going to want to do a build that focuses on those spells, okay? There's definitely a little bit more of a single target focus with this entire tree, but there is some AoE at the bottom. You get Living Bomb for free, and you get Ice Nova for free, and then anytime you get the Frostfire Empowerment, it crits, and it does 80% of its damage to all nearby enemies, which is actually a crazy amount of damage, okay? So that's what you're getting, And the main component of this tree is the Frostfire empowerment. You're trying to get this so that it gives you the maximum benefit you can get from this new Frostfire mastery. It's going to refresh the duration. Then, of course, if you use your major cooldown, you're guaranteed to get a proc on the Frostfire empowerment as well, which is just going to be so much more damage. So this is a really strong tree. It represents an enormous amount of damage, and I think it's going to force you to build your trees in a particular way that really takes advantage of more of the Fireball talents for Fire Mage and a lot more of the Frostbolt talents for Frost Mage. So I think that is great. That is exactly what you want from these hero talent trees. You want them to force you in a particular direction, just a little bit of a nudge. They're not kicking you down that direction. They're not like totally forcing you to do it, but I think that they should be giving you an incentive to build your talent tree in a particular way to take advantage of all these cool new buffs that you're going to be getting. So this is an example of a tree that does that very, very well, and I think that this is going to be one of the strongest. This is probably the strongest hero tree that we have seen so far. I would say definitely is the strongest one that we've seen so far. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Those are my thoughts about it, and just some interesting little tidbits that I picked up. Let me know if you guys saw anything in this tree that I missed, some really important interaction that I completely missed. I would love to hear from you guys in the comments down below. Thank you so much again for watching. I love you all. I will continue to cover the hero talent trees as they come out, so stay tuned for the next one. I will see you guys later.